problem. Okay, if everybody's ready, I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Redwood Coast Transit Authority and call the roll call.
Director Short.
I'm here.
City Alternate Tinkler.
Here.
Chairman Altman. Chair Altman.
And I am here too. Thank you. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Any member of the public may speak on any agenda item for a time period not to exceed 3 minutes prior to the public agency taking action on an agenda item. Do we have any public comment? Not seeing any public present. I'm going to move on to the consent calendar. And looks like we're just going to approve the meeting minutes of March 30 annual workshop.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion.
I can second that.
Please pull the vote.
Is there any public comment?
City Alternate Tinkler.
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
Chairman Altman.
Yes. And do we have any public comment on that item, the consent calendar? Not seeing any. We're going to move on to number 4, presentation and discussion on preliminary fiscal year 26-27 RCTA budget.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Altman, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Really appreciate it. This is our first look at the fiscal year 26-27 RCTA budget, and we'll take comments, receive input from the board today, and then on a couple focus areas especially. Then next month we'll come back and adopt it then in time for the start of the fiscal year on July 1. Next year proves to be another exciting, busy, and also challenging year for the agency. On the capital side, we have dedicated funding that's allowing our 3 major capital projects to continue to develop and move forward. But on the operations side, which is our main budget, there are some areas of concern that our costs have risen more in recent years than our revenues have, and we'll talk about the ramifications of that and the details of that in a little bit here. We operate upon a reserve fund that fluctuates from year to year. It's used not only as a buffer against unexpected expenses or economic downturns, but it's also used as our pot of money for local match on our bus replacements and any other capital grants that require a local match. Fortunately, our TIRSIP grants that we're building most of our capital projects with are zero match, and we love that. But yeah, unfortunately, not all of the grants are of that nature. So some of them have up to 50% match requirements, which can be a big hit for. So speaking of the one-time money, we are still the beneficiaries of apportionments of a $2.2 million one-time COVID relief funding that started to flow to us about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're able to access about $400,000 per year through the Caltrans grant reimbursement mechanism. It's generally related to federal money, can't be used to match other federal money, so that's what kind of limits us to $400,000 per year that we can claim in these funds. So we're down to about 2 years left. We've claimed 1.4 of the 2.2 million. So we expect to do 2 more claims for $400,000 each in the next 2 fiscal years, and that will have exhausted that fund. The importance of that is that we were the intent was for us to continue to build up our reserve accounts for rainy days and for the future capital projects and the like, which we have done, but not to the extent we'd hoped, because our costs have risen over the last few years while our operating funding has shrunk a little bit. So that's caused us to go over, I guess structurally over budget a little the last 2 years, which dips into this money that we would normally have built our reserves with. And we'll see an example of that when we dive into the proposed 26-27 budget. But just checking on the reserves account, they were pegged at 551,611, and that was in the, that's a typo there, that was in the 23-24 audit, so that would have been on June 30th, 2024. And then that number dropped to about $250,000 as of the June 30th, 2025, our most recent audit. And that was due to a couple factors, some grants that we hadn't gotten a reimbursement in yet. So we had a kind of a large account receivable line that finally did, that did work itself out in the current fiscal year we're in. We've received, we're fully caught up on our grants. So we received a couple years worth in 1 year because of the delays in the prior year. So we expect that the reserves that had dropped to about 250,000 just 9-10 months ago, according to figures worked fresh today, we're probably at about 1.1 million. So the situation has improved, and we'd like to continue that streak. But when you look at the current preliminary budget that we have, we show a projected, with the $400,000 from the pandemic money added in, we do show a building of reserves by an additional 193,000. So the board can certainly do the math there. It shows that we have like a structural deficit in the $200,000 range if it weren't for that CARES money. So, which is, about to run out in the following year. So that's a concern that we want to navigate to make sure that we protect those reserves and that which are used for capital purchases, capital projects as much as we can, while balancing the needs of operations, which is our basic product. We expect to, well, we know we do. We received 2 buses recently, and then 3 more came in last week. So we've got 5 very new buses in the fleet in the last few months, and those invoices have not fully come through and hit. So that's going to draw some of the reserve balance back down again, because we don't get reimbursed 100% for these buses. So in fact, I believe one of these is a 50-50 match, which is going to really hurt us, and the others are like 85-15. So that will drop our reserves back down under $1 million for sure. Once that's ledgered out in the next couple of months as the fiscal year closes. So looking ahead, some of the assumptions that are in the budget, we try to be conservative, so we're assuming a similar amount of fares that we've been collecting. Ridership has been up. We've had a couple really strong years in a row of ridership recovery, to where we're back up where we were before the COVID hit as far as ridership. This year, our money, our lifeblood money, if you're looking on kind of the landscape-oriented budget there, about the third or fourth line down, our TDA Article 4 local transportation funds are back up again. So last year's number was $795,243. This year's claim number is $916,479, and that's due to a quirk in how the funds are dispersed. These are projected each year, and then we file our claim and build our budget based on projected numbers. And then at the end of the year, when the actuals are compared to the projected, if the reality came in, if actuals came in better than the projected number from the start of the fiscal year, then it creates a surplus that's then reprogrammed to us the year after that. So there's like a year gap. So of this 916, it would have been about the same as the last year if it hadn't been for $120,000 spillover from the prior year, which would have been from 24-25. So the actuals in that fund came in better that year than projected by a little over $100,000. And then Tamara is able to, after the audits are done, the year after that, she reprograms it back to us. from the local transportation commission. So that's good that it jumped up to 916, but it also could drop again next year because that's mainly from the spillover from 2 years ago. The next line down, which is state transit assistance for operations, that's the culprit that's causing us a lot of fiscal concern right now. That number's down to 254,000, and just 2 years ago it was 500. So it's basically been cut in half. It's an excise tax on diesel fuel statewide. So, part of the problem's been that, diesel fuel was down until the last few months a little bit in price. So that makes a difference because it's a percentage of the price per gallon. But just in general, there's less diesel being sold in California. So it's kind of a stagnant or declining funding source. So we have to keep an eye on that. So that's causing our major budget hole is the fact that the STA funds are way down in the tank from a couple of years ago. Other revenues are pretty straightforward. We have some zeros in there that assumes we have a bus that's long overdue to arrive that we hope it arrives this fiscal year so we can pay it this fiscal year. If that bus, it's our first electric bus to be honest. So if that electric bus doesn't show up, then, and we should know by the time we meet in June. So if it doesn't, I'll insert that money back in here and we'll just roll those funds to the next year because they're not on a time expiration. It's just a matter. I'm showing zero with the assumption that that bus finally arrives this week or next month and we can get her paid off in the current. Our operating is about even on the 5311, which is federal operating assistance for all rural providers. So we use that for our local routes, dial-a-ride. It's used for everything we do. The 400,000 I explained earlier is the one-time COVID money that we're accessing at about that rate per year. And then we get 300,000 we're capped at for 5311F operating, which is for our Route 20 that goes between Smith River and down to Eureka. That's a pretty hard cap normally, but in the transit world, things get weird. So this last year, we actually received 400,000 for that. And the rumor is it's possible that could happen again this year, but we can't count on it. So we're budgeting for 300, and if it comes in over that, that would be great. But yeah, all these years, Caltransit's put a 300,000 per project cap on the routes. Then all of a sudden last year they found some extra money, so we were the beneficiary of some of that. The last line here, or nearing the bottom of the top section, is the 5339 capital line, and that is the federal share of 2 buses that we'll be replacing probably about at the end of the fiscal year because we haven't ordered them yet. But those will be 2 more F-550s that'll come in, and we'll get reimbursed $403. And if you look towards the bottom, the sale price of the 2 is about $500,000. So it takes care of a little over 80% of it. So then, yeah, in our basic operating expenses, I don't think there's any. The main points to talk about are what we're assuming we're going to do for the service platform. So I would steer you down to like there's footnotes 16, 17, and 18. There's the big numbers like towards the middle of that section. So it's O&M contract for fixed route of $748,000. O&M contract for the Smith River Arcata intercity route, $621,000. And then O&M for dial-a-ride at $241,000. All 3 of those figures are assuming that we execute our available option year with TransDev, which hasn't happened yet, but we're in discussions with them to do that. And the reason being is they had a reasonable cost escalator in their out years when they bid it 5 years ago. I want to say 3.5% for next year. Whereas I've been talking with peers and everyone that's going out for brand new contracts now is seeing much larger cost increases, even from the winning bids because of insurance problems. So it's in our best interest to take these options that we have and run with them and keep our costs from dramatically increasing, at least for the next couple of years. So the assumption that's in there, so that does increase our rate by $1.20 an hour as well as some fixed costs. But we are making some assumptions that we're going to work with TransDev to reduce some staffing on the property. That's local, 1 or 2 local jobs will be consolidated to save us in the range of $100,000 a year. Plus, we've already, or what will be on today's agenda, we'll be asking you to approve the summer schedule that won't have the service enhancement this year. I think we talked about that at our last meeting as a quick thing we can do to try to balance our budget a little bit. That'll save about 990 annual hours, which equates to like $70-some thousand. And that's from not adding the extra midday trips to Route 20 and 199 that we usually do during the summer, because it is our peak season. So we're planning on doing that. We've been telling people that we're going to do that, but the actual decision will happen tonight. Yeah, that's the most complicated part to explain is, so even with that, I will point to the bottom, we still show a deficit. So if we are able to, in the next fiscal year, reduce service more, then we could balance the budget better. So right now, we're down about 200,000. We're up 193 because of the 400,000 of one-time money, but if that weren't available, we'd be in the hole 207. So I'm going to suggest and bring to you guys at our next meeting, there were a package of relatively minor service reductions that were identified in last year's short-range transit plan. Mostly in like the late afternoon, a little bit of Saturday service, stuff that I don't believe will kill our core product. But I think that could also harvest us maybe another 1,000 hours, save another 75 grand or so. That would be more at a place I would feel comfortable. Then we're only, of our we're still building our reserves, and we're only draining them about 100,000 or so. For operating the structural deficit would only be about 100,000 for next year, which would to me be more acceptable than 200. It's a lot. Drinking from the fire hose. I feel bad for Ms. Tinkler. There's a lot of information here. I think maybe it'd be good to open it up for questions, and I'm sure I forgot to cover a lot. But on at the bottom of the page is our capital budget. But we do pay for most of our capital projects now out of a different fund, and I did not get a chance to print that out for you, but that's the TERSIP fund that pays that. So at the bottom of this, the budget in the regular RCTA fund is not as big as it used to be. We're only planning on getting 3 new buses next year, versus this year where we plan on getting 6. We have some money in there for some miscellaneous security upgrades. We've already made some to the facility in preparation for change activity in our neighborhood there. We do have some money that we need to set aside for all our radios most of them, I should say, not all. Most of our radios are at the end of their useful life. So we're changing those out with each new bus that comes in. So I just had to order like 4 new radios this last month. So that'll continue as we add new buses. We'll get new radios, get up to current generation. And then we do have 60,000 set aside again for bus stop improvements, mostly semi-seats. We hope to order another batch, as well as there'll be some concrete work needed at some of these bus stops like we did this year. So that's pretty much it. I'll stop and maybe we take questions or discussion.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have some. When you talked about reducing your workforce by combining some positions, does that mean someone's losing a job, or that's because someone's retiring and you just won't fill it?
That's to be determined. We're working with the contractor on that, so I can't really say with specificity.
Okay.
But
And I guess my other question, and I apologize, as you know, I'm an alternate, so I understand that STA fund is going down because the people aren't buying diesel fuel as much. Is there a state plan for changing that? I mean, if statewide, all our transit systems are relying on that? I was just curious.
That's a great question, Candace. I'd like to say yes, but I don't know for sure that there is. I know it's something that's been discussed in Sacramento. But yeah, I have not heard of a concrete plan to replace it, but it would be great.
And I'm going to trust you because obviously I'm a newbie and you know what you're doing, but it does worry me, as I guess nobody really wants to hear that we're reducing our services. So I just guess my concern would be that we make sure it's, there's people who rely on getting to work on those buses, as you well know. So that is a concern for me. But reality.
No, I totally agree. And you got my word that we're going to look at with a sharp knife at the lowest hanging fruit that shouldn't that'll affect the least amount of people.
Okay.
I mean, that's how we do it. So, but yeah, no, it's not a great situation. We've been over the last 10 years, we've doubled our labor rates. Fuels went crazy. And it just and our revenues have increased somewhat, just not enough to keep up with the pace of the cost. So that's ultimately what leads to the deficit.
Will this include an increase in what it costs per ride for individuals?
No, there's no fare increase listed here, but it's a great point if we wanted to look at it. We certainly could, but no, there's nothing baked in there for a fare increase.
When will we find out what positions are affected? Next meeting?
Probably, the contract, I'd try to bring back more information by next meeting, but the contract we're in currently runs through December, so it's kind of weird. It straddles the fiscal year, so our extension wouldn't really kick in until January. So I'm not sure if they can do how much of the position reconfiguration they'd be able to do on the fly versus at the end of the year. I have to find out. But yeah, it could be.
Just kind of curious, Joe. So would you say it's fair to say that we're keeping our winter schedule due to fuel costs alone? Almost, maybe.
Almost fair, yeah. That's a big part of it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Any public comment? Okay, no public comment, so no action necessary on that item, so we'll move to number 5, which is approved continuation of winter schedule through September 26th.
Thank you. Just getting caught up here. Yes, so as we talked about when this kind of the depth of the problem became clear when we were starting to go through this budget at the workshop back in March, we talked about one of the ways we could save money is the last couple of years, maybe 3, we have been augmenting our service in the summer because the demand's the highest in general, weather's the best, we have the most tourists in town and everything. So we were adding a 3rd daily trip to Eureka. So the south segment of Route 20, that takes about 6 hours per trip as far as, cost. We added a midday trip of that in the summer the last couple of years, and it was well received. And we added a midday trip of Route 199, which runs between here in town and Gasky. And that one doesn't do as well. But they both make the system easier to use because then folks can do a half-day trip instead of a whole day. Because our normal schedule on Route 20, for example, in the morning, there's a morning trip going down to Eureka, and then it comes back in the late morning, and then there's an afternoon trip that goes down and comes back in the late afternoon. So you basically have to spend the day down there. Whereas when we're able to add the third trip each day, you're able to do half-day trips, which works better for some folks. So that would be deferred. It's so the whole concept of the winter schedule saves about at least $100,000 a year because October through Memorial Day weekend, we run the lower level of service. So that's pretty significant. Then the summer bumps it up, and by not doing the enhancement this summer, which is what we're recommending, it'll save us about, sorry about the shading here, I thought I had this covered. Yeah, that's pretty close. Typo. But, so we'll save about 70,000 by not enhancing the summer service this year. So we're basically requesting that to be approved, and then we will study further. We're not set, I might be able to come up with some informational stuff that we can talk about at our June meeting, and then by our August, we'll need to decide what we're gonna do in the fall, if we wanna do a little bit further cuts, to the service. And hopefully by then, things may have changed as far as fuel prices, or something else might come along, but we certainly don't wanna just bury our head in the sand and not prepare. So, staff's recommending that we just continue our winter service level. That also saves us on brochures, because we normally do a new brochure run this time of the year for the summer. So it's just a few $1,000, but that also saves on that. So we'll just continue to run our service as advertised from last fall's brochure through the end of September.
Any questions from the board? Any public comment?
Oops, there
There we go.
okay. Okay, so anyway, about the reduction of the mid 190 or Smith River Route 20, it does not connect with the ongoing further south. We connect with Humboldt County and we go on down to Ukiah. We don't, but their actual route goes on to Ukiah and Santa Rosa. The midday does not. We have a morning one that connects and an afternoon one. And so we service that. So there's a continuity by keeping the first two that he had mentioned. But the middle one is no connection. It just stops in Eureka. See, so there's a talk for, it's not as detrimental to the passenger base, to people that are traveling up and down the coast. The first one and the 3 o'clock one gives them further options if they further, like if they're going to San Francisco or San Diego, they can connect all the way to Santa Rosa and catch on further on. So I didn't know if you knew about the connection, and that's really integral for us to have the early morning one and the afternoon one.
Thank you, Erica. No, that she made a great point that I totally forgot to mention. But yeah, our morning trip is part of the North State Express going south, and our late afternoon, evening trip is part of the North State Express going north, returning from Sonoma County. That midday trip that we do in the summer doesn't connect with anything. And it may actually behoove us to not run that for a while until the state finds its checkbook, because we are trying and lobbying to get a second trip of the North State Express funded. The state loves the project. Now they just need to love it with some funding. But so far they've just said they love it. But I do think it's a good candidate to get some outside funding, which would be great for us because we overmatched the 20 quite a bit now. So in a way, it might be better to reduce this trip until better financial times, or until some dedicated North State Express money comes that could help pay for it.
Yeah, thank you. I did not know that. And I'll make a motion that we approve the continuation of the winter schedule through September 2026.
I second that.
Please hold a vote.
Director Short,
Yes.
City Alternate Tinkler,
Yes.
and Chair Altman.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6. Approved chair to sign letter requesting Del Norte County to remove its name from Williams Drive ground lease to allow revised ground lease execution in Redwood Coast Transit Authority's name.
I will move to approve.
I have a motion. Well, our CTA is trying to get an extension on their lease for another 20 years.
Okay.
And you've been working with the state on that. Did you get a deal? And this is what you need to,
This is what we need to keep moving. So we were working with the state through the fairgrounds on the process, and they even got to a point where there was a draft new lease, and then they realized that Donort County was the lessee on the original lease. And I hadn't noticed that either, but from 2004, when we started, because we were in our infancy, the county went ahead and leased the land from the state of California. So
Okay.
that step has to be addressed before we can do the
Okay,
revised
I
lease.
actually followed that. So I will
It's a-
second.
Thank you. I have trouble explaining it for
and
sure.
we're hoping we have a lease before we put in all the charging station infrastructure.
Yeah, that'd be ideal, yeah.
Please pull the vote.
City Alternate Tinkler,
Yes.
Director Short,
Yes.
Chairman Altman.
Yes, thank you.
Did we?
Any public comment? Not seeing any public comment. We'll move on to number 7, which is approved submittal of TIRCP Cycle 8 grant application in the amount of $1,580,000 for replacement electric dial-a-ride buses and a bus wash system. That's the worst case scenario, yeah. And authorize executive director to execute grant documents.
Yes, this is the fun part of the agenda today. So this grant application, this is cycle 8 of TIRCP, which is Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, if I believe to be the acronym to be correct. But we're eligible not because we have rail up here, but SMART down in Sonoma County, and then into the Bay Area with Amtrak is. So we applied successfully in cycle 6 in a partnership application with our friends from Humboldt, and we received $7.3 million. That's gotten us going on our 3 big capital projects, which is the electric vehicle charging that Vice Chair Altman mentioned. That'll be at our yard, which we're trying to renew the lease of. That ties back to the last item. But then also the Downtown Transit Center, which is a huge project for us. That's one of them. It's a little further behind. It's just got through its environmental phase. And then buying a batch of 6 electric buses to use some of the charging stations. So those are the 3 big ones that were funded in cycle 6. We did not apply in cycle 7 because we were just too busy getting started. Cycle 8, call for projects came this year, and we felt it was a good time to request some more funding. The state's not in as great a shape, so the funding amount overall is down a little. So we wanted to make our ask relatively modest. And we wanted to initially ask for more money for the transit center, for the downtown transit center, just because we do feel that it's under budgeted right now. But we had a couple one-on-one pre-call meetings with the folks that run the program and do the scoring. They didn't advise us doing that because the CTC doesn't like, oh, the costs went up, so we need more money kind of applications. So with their guidance, we come up with some stuff that we didn't ask for before that will help us financially and operationally, but not just that. And then they said, wait for cycle 9. Once we through design, we'll know more about the exact costs and what the fiscal need is for the transit center. So that seems like good advice that they were offering, so we're following that. So for cycle 8, we're asking for 3 dollar-ride vans, electric, and a drive-through bus wash that we would put into our outside bus bay where we currently wash by hand at the yard. And it's a $1.58 million ask. We think it's going to be competitive. You see the attachment. We put quite a bit of work into the application. It's scored based on emissions reduction, so it's unclear how well we do, so we're going to cross our fingers and hope, but it was too good of an opportunity to just let pass by. So I want to thank our friends. I think Jeff might be on the call from Green Dot, but they helped put the application together and we got it submitted on time. So now we wait, but we wanted to bring it to the board and get your support for us applying for these.
I will move we approve the submittal of the TIRSIP Cycle 8 grant application in the amount of $1,580,000.
I would second that.
Please pull the vote.
Director Short,
Yes.
City Alternate Tinkler,
Yes.
and Chair Altman.
Yes. Any public comment on that item? Don't see any public comment, and I did just notice on the last meeting minutes that I'm chairing this meeting in error. Darren, you're the chair. You didn't say anything. Nope. Say a word. I'm gonna have to charge you for this.
I remember you saying, always the vice, never the chair, so I thought I'd let it go.
True. That's what I get for complaining.
Is that like bridesmaid? and
I could have
bride?
swore it said Joey was chair when I saw that on there. Joey was chair last year. Yeah. So we're moving on to announcements.
I would just invite Aline to come up and say hi. She's our operations and safety manager, assistant well, you tell them what your titles are and
Okay.
maybe give us a little update on how operations is
All right.
going.
My name's Aline Titus. I've been with Redwood Coast Transit for 17 years. I am the operations safety manager and the assistant GM. Right now, we just got a new driver last week that puts us at 6. We have 7 routes. We had a couple borrowed drivers from Merced that were here with us. They left. I have one right now in skill course training. I have 2 ready to go into class. I have 2 former employees that are fully licensed and ready to come back. And that will put us at 10 or 11, and we have 7 routes. The thing with training is it's a revolving door. I could train people, and a couple months later, they could go somewhere else due to making more money. And I don't begrudge anyone because I want to see everyone do wonderful. Yeah, and I tell people that too. You know, the door's always open if you want to come back to us. I try to keep a positive attitude with people. There for a while, we were having a hard time getting people that could pass pre-employment drug tests, for one thing. I would interview people, and then they'd come in there and go, well, you know, I smoke pot at night. And I'm like, well, you know, you can't get a commercial license. And they're like, well, it's legal. Well, it's not federally legal. So it is a revolving door, but I see the positive part of it. I really love my job. I go out and drive just like everyone else. I don't ask anyone to do anything that I haven't done. You know, and if they're having a hard time, our new trainees, I tell them, if you don't feel comfortable, I'll go ride with you, you know, and show you the route and stuff like that. You know, I try to be positive. We are like a small family. We're there most of our hours. Erica gets there at 5:15 a.m. I get there at 7, and we leave about 4 or 5, sometimes 7 or 8. It depends on what's going on. If we have meetings late at night, we're there till 8 or 9. You know, and I want everyone to feel comfortable, and that's the way it's always been. Erica's been there almost 15 years this year. She says 13, but but, you know, I want the people that come in, I always treat them like they're part of the family, so they feel comfortable. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. So hopefully within a month, we're gonna have 11 drivers and 7 routes.
So if you have 11 drivers and you have 7 routes, and how many days a week is it 6 or 7?
We run 6 days a week, but
So-
this will allow us to give people days off.
That was my
Yeah,
question, is how
yeah.
is that working out as far as
And
how long of a day each I mean, it concerns me you know, it's
Yeah.
important not to have tired drivers, so.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm constantly trying to get people in there because I don't want to burn the people out that I have. But I have like a fine line too because I don't want to hire too many people and then take away from the people that are trying to make a living for their families and stuff, you know. So me and Scott sat down and talked about it. I told him about 10 drivers, 11. And then later on, if we have to, we could look at part-time. If people, you know, there are some people that are working now 6 days a week. And they're working 6 or 7 hours a day.
Yeah, that was my question, is that, are they normally on what we would call 4 10s, 4 days, 10 hours a day, or are they on like 5 days
No,
a week,
the
8 hours a day?
The shifts are different. So
Okay.
you have some shifts that they come in at 6:45 and they're off at 9, and then they come back at 10:55 and they work till 1:30, and then they come back at 3 till like 7. So it's, you know, you have split shifts, and then you have the Arcata routes that leave at 6:05, and they leave for Eureka at 7:30, and they're back like 1:30. Yeah, and then we have another one that leaves at 1:30 and goes to Smith River, and then Eureka, and they're back around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So it just depends on what shift you're doing. So
shifts that go 10 hours.
Yeah.
They go from 6 to 9, 9:50.
all of our
9 hours.
shifts are done, you know, by 9 p.m. with different shifts. They
Ms. Titus, you mentioned a couple of people coming back.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? I was just curious why, what made them come back?
Okay, so we have one person that is for funding purposes, they're shutting the program down where they work. I can't say any more than that. And another one is at a job that he just wasn't happy at, and he asked if we would be willing to bring him back instead of, you know, because it cuts, the people that are trained and have medical and everything, you don't have to go through like this whole skill course. We do have to put them through classroom. That's 35 hours. Skill course is 10 hours, and then I have to go out 14 hours one-on-one. So if I get a classroom of 4 people, it's only me. I'm the one that does everything. So when I go out one-on-one, we use them in dial-a-ride and stuff because you don't have to have a commercial license to drive the little MVs or the medical over. So I try to get them hours that way while I'm working with one person. When we go to tests, we have to go clear to Eureka. That's 100 miles away. If they don't pass, then we come back. I went down 3 times in 2 weeks with a driver that but now, a long time ago, you could go down there and take the test, and if you didn't pass, they didn't charge you. Now they're charging you almost $50 to go back and retest. And that's on the people that are coming on board. They pay for their licensing. So, you know, it's rough here. Everything is.
Yeah, like you say, you can't begrudge somebody for wanting to go and get a better paying job, but for them to want to come back when things don't work out really says a lot about the family that they're coming back to, so it's good to hear.
Yeah, okay, if that's all.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the board? Joe, you have anything else?
Nope, I'll spare you.
All right. Well, we have the right name on the stuff to sign, so let's adjourn this meeting to the next RCTA board meeting, Monday, June 22nd, right here at the Flynn at 5:30. Thanks, everyone.